The first time I touched her, it happened by accident. It was late, close to midnight. Megan had gone to bed early, and the TV was still glowing in the bedroom. I was in the kitchen getting a glass of water when Carla walked in. She was Megan's stepmother, 52, always put together, always carrying herself like she belonged wherever she stood. That night she was in a thin silk robe, the kind that made you look twice even if you didn't want to. She brushed past me to reach the counter, and her hand slid along my forearm. It wasn't quick. It wasn't the normal kind of bump you forget about. She didn't apologize either. She simply looked at me and mentioned that I was up late, and there was something in her voice that made the room feel smaller. I remember thinking I should move away. I was 38, married for 7 years, living outside Dallas, working in commercial real estate. My life was stable, almost boring in a way that usually felt safe. Megan was kind and hardworking, always juggling things for her marketing job. We had our routine. But lately the house had felt quiet, even when we were both home. Carla had moved in temporarily after her second divorce. She had explained it as needing time to get back on her feet. She acted like a woman who didn't really fall apart, even when life gave her reasons to. Still, I started noticing things. How she lingered in conversations. How she asked about my day like she actually wanted the answer, while Megan was half in her phone, half in her work. That night, Carla leaned against the counter, and the robe slipped a little at the shoulder. I looked away and told myself I should go back to bed. I didn't. She commented that I worked too hard, and she implied Megan didn't really see it. It hit me harder than it should have, because I already felt that, even if I hadn't said it out loud. At home I was reliable. Expected. The guy who paid bills, fixed things, kept everything steady. Nobody was cruel about it. I just felt ordinary. Carla stepped closer and took my wrist again, this time on purpose. She told me I deserved attention too. I replayed that moment a lot, because it was the moment I could have ended it cleanly. Instead I stayed still. I let her move into my space. I let her lean close enough that I could smell her perfume, warm and expensive. When she kissed me, it wasn't rushed. It felt like she was testing whether I'd stop her. I didn't. That was the moment everything changed. I never pictured myself as the kind of man who would cheat. My father was steady and loyal, and I thought I was built the same way. But feeling invisible does something to you. It pulls at you quietly until you're close to the edge and you don't even notice you're there. After that night, Carla started small. Passing touches in the hallway. Sitting too close on the couch when Megan worked late. Little comments about how I looked in certain shirts. She knew what she was doing. I can admit that now. At the time I kept telling myself it was harmless. In the evenings she started knocking lightly on my office door, asking if I wanted a drink, asking about work, asking about stress. She'd talk about how marriage changes after a while, like loneliness was this shared secret between us. When Megan left for a weekend conference, Carla and I were alone in the house. I tried to keep distance. I stayed busy, went for a run, cleaned the garage, found things to do. By evening she was in the living room with soft music playing and a glass of wine in her hand. She looked at me in a way that made me feel wanted, not useful, not dependable. Just wanted. She noticed I was tense and guided me to sit with her. Then her hand moved to my shoulder, rubbing slowly, casual at first, then more deliberate. I remember the exact second I stopped pretending this wasn't wrong. Her lips were near my ear, her hand slid down my chest, and my body responded before my mind could argue. It wasn't love, but it felt intense. It felt urgent, like something I'd been missing. That weekend, we crossed a line there was no coming back from. It wasn't forced. I chose it. I let her pull me in. I let the secrecy feel exciting. I let myself believe she understood me better than Megan did. Afterward, Carla would lie beside me and trace patterns on my chest, telling me in a low voice that I made her feel young and alive. I took those words as proof that it meant something. I took them as proof she felt what I felt. Looking back, I can see how carefully she fed that idea. A few weeks later, Megan hosted a small dinner party. Her work friends were there, wine on the table, laughter, normal conversation. Carla showed up looking sharp, like always, red lipstick, a black dress that made people pay attention. One of Megan's friends made a loud joke about Carla not looking old enough to have a stepdaughter grown like Megan. Carla smiled, but her jaw tightened. Another woman piled on with a comment about how living with a young married couple must remind Carla of what she didn't have. It was subtle, but it was sharp. The air shifted. I saw something flicker in Carla's eyes, not sadness, more like anger or pride, something colder. Later, in the kitchen while everyone else was outside, Carla leaned close and said she could tell people thought she was past her prime. She also made it clear they didn't see what she could still do. Her hand slid into mine under the counter where no one could see. I squeezed back. That squeeze was its own choice. Not the first kiss. Not the first night. It was choosing her in a room full of people, choosing her silently over my wife. I told myself I was protecting her, standing with her against cruelty. The truth was I was already too deep, and I had no idea what it would cost. After that night, I started telling myself it wasn't just physical anymore. A few nights later, Megan stayed late at the office, and Carla came into my home office around 9. She asked if I was okay, in a tone that sounded less playful than usual. I said I was fine out of habit, and she pointed out that I didn't look fine. I admitted work had been heavy. She sat on the edge of my desk, close enough that our knees brushed, and she said I carried everything and didn't let anyone carry me. It sounded a little dramatic, but in that quiet room it felt personal. I stared at paperwork like it mattered, then finally admitted that sometimes I felt like I was just there, like I could disappear into routine and no one would notice. Carla didn't laugh. She didn't brush it off. She simply said she noticed. That night we didn't rush into anything. We talked. She opened up about her divorce and how her ex had traded her in for someone younger. She talked about how people treat women over 50 like they're finished, like they're decorative or expired. I told her I thought people were blind, and she studied my face like she wanted to keep those words. Over the next weeks, talking became our pattern. Conversations that stretched longer than they should. Coffee after Megan left for work. Small texts during the day, nothing explicit at first, just little check-ins. Carla would mention I looked stressed, ask about meetings, say she made my favorite pasta. I told myself it felt intimate in a harmless way. That's how I justified it. One afternoon I came home early and found her reading barefoot in the living room. She noticed right away and commented on me being home early. I told her a meeting got cancelled, and she invited me to sit. I hesitated, then did. We talked about TV shows and her plans to move out soon. She mentioned an apartment she looked at and said she wouldn't be in the house forever. The idea hit me harder than I expected. She pretended it was nothing, then added that I would be fine and didn't need her, but her eyes stayed on me like she wanted me to argue. I didn't know how to pretend. I admitted I wasn't sure. That was the moment she leaned in and kissed me again, not hungry, not urgent, just soft, like she was testing me. This time I didn't hesitate at all. After that we moved carefully, like we were learning each other. There was tension and heat, but there was also conversation. She checked whether I was sure, and I showed her I was. I asked whether she was sure, and she smiled like the answer was obvious. Later, in the guest room, she rested her head on my chest and whispered that I made her feel alive. I took it in like it meant something. I told her she made me feel wanted, and she answered that I was. That's when I started confusing desire with connection. I began thinking we were building something real, that our late-night talks meant depth. I thought the way she listened when I talked about work and feeling overlooked meant she truly saw me. Carla leaned on me more openly after that. She asked for advice about money, about whether she should start dating again. One time she brought it up in a way that made it sound like she was testing me, and I answered too quickly, saying I wouldn't like it. She smiled like she'd won something. We weren't just sneaking around anymore. We were emotionally tangled. Megan noticed I was distracted. She'd ask if everything was okay, and I'd nod too fast. Carla and I developed routines, quick touches in passing, long looks across dinner, messages late at night after Megan fell asleep. The lines blurred faster than I wanted to admit. I kept telling myself this was more than physical. I told myself Carla understood my loneliness, that I was helping her feel valued again, that we were healing something in each other. But sometimes, when she thought I wasn't looking, I'd catch a different expression on her face. Like she was measuring me, calculating. I ignored it. By the time a month had passed, we weren't just having an affair. We were depending on it. And I was already starting to believe she was the only one who really saw me. It's strange how something wrong can start to feel routine. By September, Carla and I had patterns that looked almost normal from the outside. Megan would leave around 8. I'd act like I was on a call downstairs. Carla would wait, then slip into my office and shut the door quietly. At first, we always talked. She'd sit on the edge of my desk and ask about my clients, and why I hadn't pushed harder at work. She'd tell me I was better than the men above me and that I didn't fight for it. Those words felt good. I didn't realize how hungry I was for them until I had them. Soon, talking turned into something else almost every time. We stopped rushing. In the beginning it had been urgency. Now it was slower and more familiar. She'd slide her hand into mine like it belonged there. I'd pull her into my lap. We'd kiss without hesitation. I can't pretend it wasn't intense. Carla knew exactly how to move, how to make me feel like I was the only man in the world in that moment. Sometimes she looked at me like she was studying me while touching me, present and calculating at the same time. At night, if Megan fell asleep early, I'd slip down the hallway. Carla would already be waiting, guest room light dim, door slightly open. It became our signal. I started measuring my days by those moments. By October, I was texting her constantly, even when I shouldn't have been. During meetings, at stoplights, in grocery store aisles while Megan compared cereal. Carla would send short messages about missing my hands, thinking about the night before, reminding me what I did to her. It kept me in a fog, like I had a private world running alongside my real one. I noticed how easily Carla switched roles. In front of Megan, she was warm and supportive, almost motherly. When we were alone, she could be confident and demanding, sometimes cold in a way that confused me. One afternoon I tried to talk about the future, about what would happen when she moved out. She responded lightly, like I was thinking too far ahead. When I admitted I didn't want it to disappear, she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She told me we should just enjoy what we had. That should have unsettled me more than it did. Instead, I kissed her like I could press certainty into the moment. The obstacle wasn't work, and it wasn't the age difference. It was reality. Carla started pulling back just enough to make me chase. She'd cancel afternoons and call them errands. She'd come home later and shrug when I asked where she'd been. Once I heard her laughing on the phone late at night in a tone I didn't recognize. The next morning she acted like nothing happened. When I asked about it, she looked at me like my question annoyed her and suggested it didn't matter. When I tried to say what I thought we were, she reminded me that I was married. The reminder landed hard, but she followed it with a slow kiss that blurred the discomfort, and I let it. When Megan's birthday came, the house filled again with friends and noise. Carla dressed carefully that night, and during dinner someone made a comment about women clinging to younger men to feel relevant. It was meant as a joke, but Carla stiffened. After the guests left, she brought it up to me quietly. She said people thought she was desperate. I tried to brush it off, told her they were wrong. She asked me to prove it. I didn't ask what she meant. I followed her down the hallway. That night felt different, less warmth, more like something she needed to win. Afterward she held me close, but her gaze drifted away, distant. She murmured that I made her feel powerful. Not loved. Not safe. Powerful. I lay there in the dark and felt something small shift inside me. 6 months after that first touch in the kitchen, I realized I wasn't choosing between two women. I was choosing between illusion and truth. Carla treated me differently when we were alone. Sometimes affectionate, sometimes impatient. When I asked what we were doing, she acted like I was thinking too much. Sometimes after we were together, she'd roll away quickly and check her phone. I noticed she rarely asked how I felt anymore. She still praised my body and my touch and my effect on her, but she stopped asking about my day. I had confused desire with connection, and the more she pulled back emotionally, the harder I leaned in. One evening I overheard her on the patio talking to a friend. She spoke casually about me being obsessed, and she said it was flattering. The words went right through me. I stepped back inside before she saw me. That was the first time I felt something close to shame, not because I'd betrayed Megan, though I should have felt that sooner, but because I realized I might have been nothing more than validation for Carla. When she came inside, she wrapped her arms around me like nothing had happened and asked if I missed her. I nodded automatically, but something had cracked. For the first time, I wasn't sure she was seeing me at all. The weight of what I was risking started pressing harder than the thrill ever had. The confession didn't come in a dramatic way. It was a quiet Tuesday evening in December. I came home early and found Megan in the kitchen, tying her hair back, humming while she stirred something on the stove. The house smelled like garlic and butter. Normal. Safe. Carla had moved into her apartment the week before, and the house felt bigger without her. For days after she left, she barely texted. Short replies. Delayed responses. Then I saw her post a photo at a rooftop bar, dressed the way she dressed when she wanted attention, surrounded by people I didn't know. That night I called her and asked if we were okay. She laughed softly and called me sweet. When I said I thought we were building something, she framed it as fun and told me not to complicate it. When I reminded her of the things she'd said to me, she didn't deny them. She just kept circling back to the fact that I was married, like that ended the conversation. When the line went quiet, the illusion finally shattered. I wasn't her partner or her future. I was proof. I was attention. I stared at my reflection in the dark window and saw how small I looked. Back in the kitchen, Megan handed me a spoon and asked me to taste the food for salt. Her voice was soft and familiar, and she had flour on her cheek. Watching her, I felt something heavy settle in my chest because she still didn't know anything. I set the spoon down and told her I needed to tell her something. She looked up and said I was scaring her. We sat at the dining table and the food stayed on the stove, forgotten. I didn't ease into it. I told her I'd had an affair. She asked who? I told her it was Carla. I watched the realization move across her face slowly, confusion, disbelief, then that moment where it looked like her breath left her body. She asked if I meant her stepmother. I nodded. She went quiet for a long time. I admitted it had been months and that I had convinced myself it meant more than it did. She went to the sink and turned off the stove. Without turning around, she asked how long. I said 6 months. She asked if it was serious, and I admitted I had thought it was, but that it wasn't real the way I told myself it was. She asked if I loved Carla. I said no, and it came out fast, certain. I admitted I had loved how Carla made me feel, wanted, seen, powerful. Then Megan asked if she hadn't made me feel that way. The question cut deeper than anything else, and I admitted she had, but that I'd stopped noticing. Megan didn't cry the way I expected. She didn't yell. She pointed out that I'd let Carla live in our house and sit at our table. She said I'd chosen Carla? I admitted I had. Then Megan asked the one question that made everything even clearer. She asked whether Carla had chosen me? I couldn't lie. I said no. Megan spoke about Carla in a tired, honest way, saying she'd always needed attention and hated feeling old and invisible. Then she said Carla had used me, and that I had let it happen. I apologized in a way that finally felt full. I owned it. Megan said she should leave for a while. I told her I understood if that's what she needed. She asked whether I wanted to fix it, and I said yes immediately. She made it clear she didn't want that answer coming from rejection or wounded pride, and I told her I wanted our marriage for real. She said I'd broken something and it wouldn't snap back. I agreed. Then she reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. The touch felt careful, not warm, almost like she was testing whether I was still safe. She didn't offer forgiveness that night, but she also didn't close the door completely. For the first time in months, I stopped chasing intensity and sat in the wreckage I'd made. The next morning, Megan packed a small suitcase. She moved steadily, folding clothes like she was preparing for a normal trip. She told me she was staying with her friend Claire for a few days and that she needed space. I didn't beg. I didn't perform. I just said okay. When she left, the house felt hollow. There were no secret signals, no late-night messages, no hidden excitement. Just quiet. The pushback came from family. Megan told her dad. He was furious and said he was calling Carla. Soon after, Carla texted me asking what I'd done, and what I'd told Megan. I said I'd told the truth. Carla accused me of ruining everything. I reminded her she'd framed it as just fun. She didn't answer in text. She called and snapped, asking why I couldn't keep quiet. For the first time, I didn't try to win her back. I told her I wasn't living in it anymore. She mocked me, suggested I was pathetic, and acted like my confession was some performance. Then she said I had been convenient, and told me not to turn it into a tragic love story. That's when I realized how far I'd been fooling myself. I ended the call and told her I was done. She hung up without another word. Megan's father showed up at the house that weekend. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten me. He spoke quietly about Carla betraying Megan before, and he admitted he should have known better than to let her back into their lives. I told him I wasn't going to defend myself, and that I was wrong. He told me that if I was serious about fixing it, I needed to do it without excuses. At night, doubt took over. Alone in the bedroom, staring at the empty side of the bed. I kept wondering if Megan was better off without me. I wondered if I had only confessed because Carla pulled away. Those questions didn't let up. When Megan called one evening, she asked whether I missed Carla. I told her I didn't miss Carla. I missed who I thought Carla was. Then Megan asked why I told her the truth. I said I couldn't stand looking at her and pretending anymore. Megan pointed out that I could have kept it quiet. I admitted that I could have, but I didn't. I didn't try to make it heroic. It was just necessary. A week later, Megan came home. Not with a hug, not with warmth, but she came back. At the kitchen table, she explained she wasn't forgiving me because I confessed. She said she was forgiving me because I wasn't blaming anyone else. She said Carla had used me, but that I had walked into it and needed to own it. I told her I did. She warned me that trying again wouldn't look the same as before. I told her I didn't expect it to. She said we'd start slow. The real standing firm wasn't against gossip. It was against habit. 2 weeks later, Carla sent one last message about missing the way I looked at her. I didn't reply. I handed my phone to Megan. She read it, then deleted it. No scene. No tears. Just closure. That night, Megan and I sat on the couch with space between us at first. Then she leaned her head against my shoulder. It wasn't urgent. It wasn't fiery. It was steady. And that's when I understood the difference between being wanted and being chosen. Carla made me feel powerful. Megan was choosing to stay. That meant more than intensity ever did. A year later, the celebration still didn't look like some big public redemption. Megan suggested hosting a small dinner, immediate family, her dad, Claire, a couple of close friends who had been kind through it all. Carla wasn't part of it. She'd moved to another city by then. We heard updates to relatives and I stopped checking. That night, the house felt different from the one where the affair started. Fresh paint. The guest room reset. No tension hiding in corners. Megan admitted she was nervous about people watching us and wondering if it was real. I reassured her it was. When everyone arrived, the hugs were polite and the smiles were measured. Megan's father shook my hand and held it a little longer than usual. It wasn't warmth, but it wasn't rejection either. During dinner, conversation stayed light until Claire raised her glass and spoke gently. She said she didn't want to talk about what happened, but about what didn't. She pointed out that Megan and I could have walked away, and that many people would have, but we didn't. She called Megan strong and said accountability mattered too. No one clapped, but the silence felt respectful. Under the table, Megan reached for my hand, and that small gesture felt bigger than any speech. Later, while we cleaned up, Megan asked if I ever thought about Carla. I admitted sometimes, but not the way I used to. Megan asked if it still hurt. I told her it didn't hurt, it embarrassed me, and that felt different. Megan said she was glad I told her the truth, and I said I was glad she stayed. We stood in the kitchen like that, two people who had seen the worst version of each other and kept going anyway. A few months later, we marked our marriage in a quiet way. We went to the courthouse and updated our marriage license, not as a remarriage, but as a date we wanted to remember. No guests, no announcement. The clerk barely looked up. Outside, Megan slipped her hand into mine and admitted it felt strange in a real way. We didn't need fancy vows. We'd already said the hard words at our kitchen table. Driving home, Megan rested her hand on my knee casually, like it belonged there. It felt like a small victory, not because we proved anyone wrong, but because we proved to ourselves that the foundation wasn't gone. It had been cracked, but we rebuilt it with clearer eyes. That night Megan told me we weren't the same people we were before. I agreed. She said that was okay. I pulled her close and listened to her breathing until we fell asleep. It wasn't fireworks. It was peace, and peace felt like something worth celebrating. For a long time, I thought betrayal was mainly about losing someone. I learned it was also about seeing yourself clearly and not liking what you find. After everything came out, I replayed those early moments again and again. I kept seeing the places where I could have stopped and didn't. That truth doesn't soften just because regret comes later. I learned that loneliness doesn't excuse damage. Feeling unseen doesn't justify becoming someone you don't recognize. I wasn't starving for love, I was starving for validation, and I went looking for it in the worst place I could find. The affair felt intense because it was built on secrecy and ego. It felt powerful because it was forbidden. But intensity isn't intimacy. Desire isn't depth. Being wanted for a moment isn't the same as being chosen over time. Megan didn't stay because of a speech. She stayed because I stopped blaming everyone else. I stopped calling it temptation or confusion or neglect. I admitted I chose it, and then I chose differently. Repair was slower than destruction. There was no rush in honesty. No thrill in sitting across from your spouse and answering hard questions. But there was something steady in it. Something solid. I learned love isn't about who makes you feel powerful. It's about who makes you accountable. Who expects you to show up fully, and who builds something with you instead of competing for attention. I still don't dress what I did up as a lesson I needed. It hurt someone who trusted me, and that sits with me. But I am proud of what came after, the nights we chose to talk instead of shutting down, the mornings we left phones face up, the small boring acts of loyalty that don't look dramatic but make a life stable. If I could say one thing to someone standing where I once stood, I'd say it comes down to noticing the quiet parts of your life before you go chasing noise. Asking for what you need before you go searching for it somewhere else. And if you fall, owning it fully, without half-truths, without convenient excuses. Because love isn't proven in passion. It's proven in what you protect. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do isn't walking away from the wreckage. It's staying, rebuilding, and becoming someone better than the man who caused it.